What are the signs? What are the typical thoughts? What are the signals your body gives you when you're in fearful avoidant mode? What is the fearful avoidance crash? How do you develop a fearful avoidant attachment style? And how do you heal it? There are 4 types of attachment styles. And fearful avoidance is actually the least well-known and well-researched, partly because it was the last one added, because they found a whole group of children and adults that didn't fit in the other 3 attachment styles. So that's why they added a 4th. So it is the least well-known, least well-researched, and least understood. But having it can have a big impact on your life and on your relationships, which is why it's so important to me that you're here, that you're understanding this, that you're learning about this, and I'm so happy to be able to tell you this. And firstly, I want to start this off with, this is not to diagnose. This whole channel, all the videos you're going to see here, this is not to diagnose. I'm not a psychologist, and it's not black and white. You can definitely recognize so much of the fearful avoidant attachment style, and maybe you're even dominantly securely attached. So don't see this as this is a strong diagnosis. I am just here to tell you all about it and really help you understand yourself a little bit better. So let's look at all the attachment styles just to know where to place the fearful avoidant one. The most common is secure attachment. Thank God it's still the most common. So 50 to 60% of people all over the world are securely attached. The other 2 are anxious and dismissive. There are several names for all of them, but let's keep it simple. So you have anxious and dismissive. And with anxious attachment, there is a lot of anxiety and preoccupation with your partner. So you might see it up here. There's a lot of anxiety and preoccupation with your partner. So you're thinking about your partner constantly. You want to do it right. You want to know if he's happy with you, if she's happy with you. And there's a lot of anxiety involved. With the dismissive avoidant, it's quite the opposite. So there is no to little anxiety and no preoccupation with the partner, which kind of comes off aloof and just not interested and just not wanting to deal with relationships. Mostly this is quite in the extreme. So the fearful avoidant attached, you go back and forth. You go back and forth between the 2, but also you want to be in a relationship, but you are afraid to give yourself fully. So there is quite a lot of anxiety. And sometimes there is preoccupation with your partner, and sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you slip into that dismissive avoidant role, and you just don't wanna deal. You shut down. Sometimes to the point where you can't really even speak. So you kind of go back and forth. It's kind of this gray zone. I call it the gray zone. You are in the relationship, but you are not completely in the relationship, because you are afraid to give yourself fully. You're afraid of that intimacy, of that connection. And this can play out in different ways. So it could be that you find yourself in toxic relationships often, which means that the relationship is not very healthy to start with. And you work really hard to get love and attention, because that could be a familiar dynamic for you. But it could also be that you're actually in a healthy relationship and you feel so much fear and tension, and you are all the time preoccupied with, am I in love enough? Is this the right choice? What if I don't miss him enough? So it's kind of hard to say this is the fearful avoidant attachment style and this is how it plays out all the time, because you could be in not very healthy relationship and act as an anxious attachment, or you could be in a fearful or in a healthy relationship and really go back and forth and really have that preoccupation with your feelings and whether you feel enough and whether this is right enough. So the gray zone is that you doubt the relationship, you doubt your feelings, it's never quite enough. And you do that because then you don't have to surrender to the relationship. As long as you have doubts, as long as you see yourself as not feeling enough, you don't have to surrender to the relationship. And that is what you're really, really afraid of. So what are the signs of fearful avoidant attachment? You have a negative view of self and negative view of partner or others, which is different from the other two, as you can see here. So the anxious attached has a positive view of others, negative view of themselves, and the dismissive has a positive view of themselves but a negative view of others. So the fearful avoidant actually has a negative view of others and of themselves, which makes it maybe even the attachment style with the most impact. But not to worry, because you're a badass too. You are absolutely a badass too. If you have this attachment style, if you recognize this, I know it can come off as, you know, people that have this attachment style are like victims, and we're definitely not. You have so many gifts that maybe you can't see yet, but you do have. So another sign is preoccupation with your feelings. So that means you constantly ask yourself and check, am I in love enough? Shouldn't I feel more? Shouldn't I miss him more? Shouldn't I feel that spark? Shouldn't I feel fireworks? So you are pretty focused on your feelings. And this happens mostly when you're in a healthy relationship as a fearful avoidant, because you're so afraid to surrender. Another sign is the vulnerability hangover. So that means that when you've had a good, beautiful moment where you might have felt the connection, you feel really bad the next moment. That could be the next day, it could be 5 minutes later, it could be a few hours later. So you notice that doubts creep back in, your feelings just completely disappear, maybe you shut down, and you wonder if this is the right relationship. So every really nice, beautiful, connected moment kind of has a vulnerability hangover afterwards. And if you don't know that, you are like, what the heck? I just thought everything was okay. I thought I was out of this. I thought it was going so well, and now I'm back to square one, which is not true. You might actually hear planes. I'm sorry. These are really old planes. We have a little airport really close to here. I'm not sure if the microphone picks it up. Another sign is that you are scared to find out that this is not the one at a later date. So you are very preoccupied with what if after we're married, after we have children, I find out that this is not the one. So you really want to make the right choice. You really want to make the right choice. So you think about it constantly, you analyze, you check your feelings just to be absolutely 100% sure that this is the one. Again, this is in healthy relationships a lot. And you constantly check whether you feel enough, whether you two look good together in pictures, for instance, whether you're compatible, whether your friends and family like him or her. So you constantly check, is this right? Is this right? Is this the right choice? And you have a lot of feelings with emotionally unavailable partners, but not with healthy, steady, loving partners, even though you really want to. So this is one of the most telling signs that when you are with an emotionally unavailable partner, you tend to have intense feelings. So that means you have to work for the relationship. You have to work for love and attention. And what that does is it gives you a certain degree of control. As long as you have to work for connection and love and attention, you get to control how much of that connection you have. And that is amazing for the fearful avoidant, because connection is actually what you're really scared of. So when you're then with a healthy, steady, committed partner that really just is all in, you have the feeling, your fear brain has the feeling that it's losing control. You don't get to control when you're connected because your partner seems to be connected all the time. And you're like, this is overwhelming. I cannot deal. And that's definitely a subconscious thing. It's not something you consciously think. But it could be that you find yourself thinking, but in my previous relationships, I did have this intense feeling. The relationships weren't very healthy or good, but I was in love. I felt all the butterflies. I felt all the things. So why don't I feel love and longing in a healthy, steady relationship? It's because you're really afraid for that connection, for that intimacy, and for surrendering to the relationship, which is just very common for the fearful avoidant and something you absolutely can heal. But it is frustrating especially when you're in a healthy, steady relationship. Another sign, the last one, is you are scared. You only stay in the relationship because you are scared to break up and be alone. And this is kind of a mindfuck, which happens a lot with the fearful avoidant attachment style. Your fear brain just tries to protect you so hard that, there's a lot of mindfucks involved. So you're scared that the only reason you're staying in this relationship is just because you're afraid to break up and be alone. And that means you're leading him on, which is not fair to him or her, which makes you feel guilty, which makes you think even more that you just are just too chicken to break up, which is just not true. This is that going back and forth and staying in the gray zone. Staying in the gray zone is so important for the fearful avoidant because that prevents you from having to surrender completely. So the fearful avoidant just wants to be in a relationship and you want to surrender. You're just really scared to. You're really scared to. We'll go a little bit deeper into how you develop this attachment style in a minute. The typical thoughts for the fearful avoidant attachment style is, what if I don't love my partner? What if I don't love my partner enough? I have to say, this is for when you're in a healthy relationship. When you're in a healthy relationship, these are the typical thoughts a fearful avoidant could have. What if I'm not really in love with my partner? What if my partner is not the one? What if I don't miss my partner enough or miss them at all when they're not around? What if I'm not really attracted to my partner? What if I can't stop thinking about my partner's lack of attractiveness or their flaws? You can really zoom in on really, really small things like their eyebrows or their nose. If I didn't feel sparks or enjoy our physical touch, does that mean they're not right for me? Sometimes I'm not aroused or turned on enough with my partner. Does that mean I don't love them? So as you can see, it really just focuses on feelings and am I feeling enough and is this right? Shouldn't I feel more? Shouldn't it feel different? Those are really typical thoughts because what they do is they get you back in that gray zone again. As long as you have those doubts, you feel like you don't really have to surrender. So as long as you don't find your feelings enough, you don't have to surrender. You don't really have to connect. You don't have to be intimate, not just physically, but also emotionally. And that's really hard to deal with if you don't know what it is, if you don't know what's happening. But again, you can definitely heal it. So there are also signs your body gives you when you run into your fearful avoidant attachment style, which can also be very confusing when you're in a healthy relationship because your fear brain will tell you that this is because the relationship is not good. That's actually not true when it is a healthy relationship. It's actually that you just find that connection so scary. So your autonomic nervous system handles pretty much all subconscious processes in your body. So your heart rate, your breathing, your blood pressure, but also how your body handles threats. And with all the insecure attachment styles, so that's also anxious and dismissive, your fear brain perceives threat in your relationship even when it's not there. So your body can respond in different ways to threat. It can completely shut down. It can activate, so you can have actually quite a lot of energy, anxious energy, or a combination of both, which is chaos. And what your body does differs per attachment style. And for the fearful avoidant attachment, it's chaos. So panic, straight up fear, and then the next moment you completely shut down. So you feel numb, you don't feel anything, and it can flip-flop between it, and it can also almost feel like you're completely shut down and don't feel anything, but are still like almost shaking with tension that you don't have to be shaking. But you can absolutely feel a lot of fear even when your body also feels shut down. So it's chaos, it's both, and it can flip-flop back and forth really fast. So your body and your fear brain are just completely confused about what to do with this threat that it's perceiving. It's not there, but it's perceiving a threat. So when your fear brain perceives a threat and your fearful avoidant attachment style is activated, you can notice the following things. Tension in your body whenever your partner comes too close. And too close can mean a lot of different things. It can mean that they come too close physically, emotionally. It can also mean that you're talking about the future, about having children, about having a life together. That can also become like too close in a way. Unrest and energy is another sign. So you have the feeling that you need to solve this problem right now. So a sense of urgency. You could also feel apathy and shutdown, so just no feelings at all, nothing at all, and maybe just fear or tension in your body. And you can feel panic and fear, sometimes even repulsion. It could be that you are repulsed by your partner. It feels like you're repulsed by your partner, but it's actually a way of your fear brain, of your body, to protect you and to create distance. So it's like a last resort to create distance and to protect you, which is so confusing. And I remember when I had this 10 years ago, when I was in intense doubts about my relationship, and looking back in my fearful avoidant attachment style. I remember this being so hard because it was just so confusing. At one moment I wanted to be with him, and I wanted to be close to him, and the next moment I felt this repulsion and even nausea, and I was like, this cannot be good. But it doesn't say anything about your relationship. It really doesn't. And you think that that's what it means. Your fear brain will tell you that that's what it means, that you have to break up, but that's just your fear brain protecting you. And for your fear brain, it's so much safer if you're not in a relationship, because the threat it perceives is in that connection, as in that intimacy. So it's a threat response that can happen even when the relationship is really good and healthy. And actually, it will happen more when the relationship is really good and healthy. Another sign is high breathing. So that means you breathe quite high in your chest and not in your belly. And this is hard because when you breathe high, you feel anxiety. When you feel anxiety, you breathe high. So that's like a cycle that just reinforces itself again and again. And you can break that by breathing deeply. But you will notice when your fearful avoidant attachment style is activated that you will breathe quite high. And then the last one is a knot in your chest. And maybe you recognize this, maybe you don't, but it almost feels like right in the middle of your chest, there's like this knot, almost like it's locked in a way. And it feels tense and it feels dense and heavy, which is also just fear, just complete fear. Yeah. So those are the bodily signs that you can recognize. And again, you can definitely heal this, and then all these signals will just become less and less and less and less. There is also a crash. So when your attachment style gets activated very harshly or thoroughly, it's very possible that you crash. And the crash it can be a panic attack, but it can also be an absolute shutdown. So that's the weird thing about fearful avoidant, that it goes back and forth. But it can be a full-blown panic attack, and it can be an absolute shutdown where you might not even be able to talk. You might not even physically be able to get words out of your mouth. That's the crash. And what I mean by crash is that it gets triggered. So something happens, either your partner does or says something which can be completely harmless, or you think something, or you hear something, and it gets triggered. And this is what happens. And it usually happens when we're already quite tense, but it doesn't have to be. It can also really happen, especially when you feel calm and relaxed, because that for your fear brain is actually quite scary, especially in a relationship when you're in connection. Another thing that happens when you have that crash is you doubt everything. You're not sure of anything anymore. You want to break up, but you don't. You're just like completely confused, and sometimes you might even feel like you're just completely going crazy, and you just don't know what to do. You just don't know what to do. Complete chaos and confusion. And your fear brain gives you the feeling that the only way to solve this is to break up, because again, that is just safer for your fear brain not to have to deal with the possibility of connection. So how do you develop this attachment style? And this is especially important because for so long, I did not recognize myself in the attachment style because of what I read about how it develops. And it might be that you have that too. So what you read when you read about this is that it has to do with severely abused children, alcoholic parents or caregivers. But there was also always a sense of like real severity. And I had a pretty good upbringing. Like I have a stable home. My parents are still together. They are loving. They really do love me. They weren't alcoholic. They were very dependable in a way. So I just did not recognize myself. I could not identify myself with that. And because of that, I just never recognized that this was actually the attachment style that was having such a big impact on my relationship. So it's absolutely true that severe trauma and severe abuse and alcoholic parents or caregivers can lead to this attachment style. But it can also definitely be more subtle. A parent or caregiver that you were supposed to feel safe with, that was there to meet your needs, was also frightening to you. That's kind of the core of how a fearful avoidant attachment style develops. So when you're a little baby, you're completely dependent on your parents or caregivers, and you want to connect. You're not just dependent on them for your physical needs. Children and babies need to connect. It's a human need. But when that same caregiver that is supposed to meet your physical and emotional needs is also frightening in a variety of ways, and I'll dive into that in a little bit, it makes it really scary and hard to connect, which can lead to the fearful avoidant attachment style. So where an anxious attachment style develops by a caregiver or parent that is inconsistent, so at some points they meet your needs and at some points they don't, and a dismissive avoidant attachment style comes from either an overwhelming parent or caregiver or one that just doesn't attune to you at all and just doesn't really meet your emotional needs, just your physical needs. The fearful avoidant has a caregiver that they're actually afraid of to a certain degree, and that can be very afraid in the when you talk about severe abuse, but it could also be the fact that your parent or caregiver just got angry out of nowhere, would have a temper, and they can be really good people and they can mean really, really, really well and love you a lot, but not be able to regulate their own emotions, not be able to soothe themselves, which makes it really scary for a little baby or child to connect and to relax in that connection when the caregiver just can get angry at any given moment. And another way this attachment style develops is when that parent is afraid of the connection themselves, it can actually be that when the connection is there or almost there, they have this fear reaction. And they might not even know it and notice it, but they can just lash out at you at the moment that connection is made, which is so confusing for a baby or child. But you learn that being connected is actually quite scary. Another way this attachment style can develop is by a parent that is quite critical. And I missed this too for a long time because I didn't see it as my parents being critical. I just saw it as they gave me a lot of feedback and wanted to help me to be able to succeed in the world, which was, again, really well meant. But it led to a lot of moments that I was relaxed or just being myself, and I had that feedback. I got that feedback that I was doing something wrong and I should be doing it differently. And sometimes it was with anger, and sometimes it wasn't even with anger, but just I had this feeling that I was always doing something wrong. And that also makes you scared of the connection and of the parent or caregiver, because you're always looking for, what am I doing wrong? What is the right way to go? How should I be, or how should I behave to be worthy of love and attention and connection? So it could be that you felt like you had to walk on eggshells. And a good way to see this is to just close your eyes for a second and then ask yourself, which of your parents did you feel like you had to perform for, that you really had to try your best for, that you felt tense around the most? And it could actually be the parent that you have the most intense feelings of love for, which makes it really confusing. So it doesn't mean that your parents are wrong or that they're terrible people. They really can mean well. But it might be that they have this attachment style too. And that's how you got it also. So as a small child, your number one goal is to be safe. So threat out of nowhere is unsafe. So a parent that just gets angry all of a sudden, that can be critical all of a sudden, or that is scared of that connection themselves, is really scary as a child. So what you do is just you don't want that connection, and you will do anything to either be perfect or try to control or to adapt to feel safe again. But the parent or caregiver, your parent or caregiver, had trouble regulating their own emotions and reactions, and it has nothing to do with you. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. There was nothing wrong with you. You were so completely worthy of love and of being yourself and having your needs met time and time again in a loving, calm, and gentle manner. It had absolutely nothing to do with you. You did not have to be any more perfect, because you already are perfect. And you were just a child with everything that encompasses. So this leads to you not really knowing what to do with your parent. It's kind of like chaos in your head. This attachment style is sometimes called disorganized attachment style, and that's what you see with kids. Like, they don't really have a structured way of going about connecting with their parents. You see them freezing, shutting down, getting angry, trying their absolute best, adapting. They try all the things, and nothing works consistently because it has nothing to do with you. Your parent or caregiver was the one that couldn't regulate their own emotions. So you wanted to be close, and maybe your parent or caregiver actually wanted that too, but you are super afraid to get close. So it's a fear of connection, essentially. All right. This was the fearful attachment style, fearful avoidant attachment style, which again is the least well known, least well researched, And there is actually much more to say about this, but this was the explanation that I was missing for years and years, which is why I started this channel, because I just really wanted to help you with this. And maybe you didn't recognize yourself in the way it developed, and you have parents that really mean well, that you actually have quite a good bond with. And it could still be that you have this fearful avoidant attachment style, and knowing that you have is the first step towards healing it. So that's why I talk about this in this way, and also in healthy relationships, because that's the place to heal it. If you want to know more about how you can heal it, because there are beautiful ways to do so, you can watch this video. And if you want to know more causes of fearful avoidant attachment, you can watch this video. Thank you so much for watching, and just know that you are so absolutely worthy of love exactly as you are.